Okay. Tonight's program is History of Fire in the Mono Basin. It's a slide talk by Rick Kattelmann, Kirstie Butler, and David Carle. It's going to delve into wildfire issues and fuels management lessons learned from history. Presented by Rick Kattelmann, Science Advisor at Whitebark Institute, Kirstie Butler, USFS Fire Prevention Technician, and author, our very own author, David Carle. Take it away.
Thanks, everybody. And a special thanks to Dave and Rich and company for the rapid change of venue today. That was amazing footwork. So tonight, perhaps something a little bit different, and it's at least in part, just part of the ongoing campaign to get people to think about wildfire, and focused here in our favorite basin. In the beginning, or at least back in geologic time, this neighborhood was frequented by major volcanic events, some of which were captured by Hollywood in 1953. But the importance of all of that is how the volcanism altered the vegetative landscape of the basin. Just as one little demonstration here, the last major eruption of the Mono craters occurred about 675 years ago, not all that long. And close by, it put out a lot of very, very hot ash. And even about 3 feet of that got deposited in the South Tufa area with rapidly diminishing amounts farther out. But as you can imagine, that kind of very hot ash transferred the landscape into something that we can guess looked like Mount St. Helens 44 years ago. Over time, the trees grew back, primary succession was happening, and the Kazetica reestablished in the basin. And from what we know, they did use fire in a variety of ways, and that in turn altered the vegetation and, of course, the landscape. But then along came the settlers, the miners, and close after them, the timber providers. And virtually every one of the mines, large and small, throughout the area had logging and at least a portable mill close by. And so during the mining era, there was a tremendous amount of timber removal. And the closer it was to the mine, the more intense that removal was. And even though obviously outside of the Mono Basin, Bodie was the biggest consumer by far for cordwood for fuel, as mine timbers, and because parts of the town burned down rather frequently, also for structural rebuilding. The demand, particularly from Bodie, was sufficient to get the whole Mono Mills logging industry viable and profitable, and the good old railroad that that moved things around, and that in these parts of the basin just totally transformed the forests and the vegetation. The other thing that happened around the turn of the previous century was the sheep moved in by the hundreds of thousands, as far as the historical accounts go. And what the lumbermen did not remove in the way of big vegetation, the sheep ate and left a absolutely devastated landscape behind. So at the turn of the century, the Mono Basin was a very different vegetation and fuels, because they're one and the same sort of landscape. So now we're going to move to more recent decades and just briefly go over some of the bigger fires that have occurred here. Shortly after the scenic area was established, there was a little study that for the previous 15 years of the scenic area about 75,000 acres. And during that 15-year period up to 1985, there were about 100 lightning caused fires, again, just within the scenic area boundaries. About half that number of human caused fires. But the acreage between those two causes was about the same, 800 in one case, 1,000 in the other. But only 3 of the fires actually burned most of that area. So as Kirstie is going to tell us in a bit, those little fires, the ignitions are all over the place, and a few of them that don't either expire in a hurry or get suppressed in a hurry can lead into much bigger deals. So some of these bigger deals are captured by Cal Fire in an online database that's easy to obtain, look at, and get maps and so on. And they've now gone back about 65 years, and there's been roughly 40 fires bigger.
I can just interrupt. Rich, could you minimize the attendees box that's on the screen? It's covering some of the slides.
Okay. Anyway, there's not much to read there. The essence of it is that in the last 65 years, Cal Fire has noted about 40 big fires, mainly meaning more than 10 acres within the basin. And Kirstie is going to tell us about the other database that she has access to, which is a lot more interesting. But in the meantime, okay, just going to go around the basin quickly. As you could probably see in that last slide of the whole thing, there's some really big fires up in the Bodie Hills, and I think all of those were lightning caused. But along 395, there have been several fires from 1960 up to just the last decade. As you can imagine, those being along the road had something to do with road access. The other kind of hotspot was out DeChambeau Ranch and Ponds, where 3 different named fires over the years burned in that area. Moving a little bit farther south, on the west shore here, the Marina Fire just 8 years ago captured the attention of many Mono Basin residents. And then there were a couple of smaller fires up above the Tioga Inn, and one right behind town back in 1970, which, as I recall, was some kid playing with fire there. And we also had the picnic fire out on right on the lakeshore. The Marina Fire, of course, was a big deal, and I got to give credit to Jeff Sullivan, who took this photo, and it's all over the internet where he stole it. But one of the striking images of fire at nighttime. The Marina Fire was one of these events that had a lot of consequences post-fire. The absence of vegetation destabilized the hillside. In order to keep the highway safe, it was necessary to put the big fence along it. Then we got a big winter, and some of the trees and so on were the lack of them was a contributory factor to the series of avalanches there. And then the need to rebuild the fence and all that. So this fire has cost tens of millions of dollars after the fact, let alone the suppression costs. Moving a little bit farther south, right in the canyon up here, the big one, which is not in the Cal Fire database, occurred in 1954. That is totally related to our water issues here. After Levining Creek got essentially dewatered, trees in the riparian zone rapidly died, especially in the lower reaches down along the delta. And just 7 years later, a massive fire took out pretty much all of the riparian vegetation down below, and now it's largely grown back. It's right outside our window here, which in turn constitutes a potential threat liability to town. Between monocraters and the highway, there have been several fires over the last couple of decades, some of which were lightning, some of which were human caused. And then as you'll notice down on the bottom there, there's one of the June fires, and the June Lake Loop area is the most heavily forested part of the basin, at least in terms of overall landscape here, and is also the site of at least 6, maybe 8 named June fires over the years. Just a few of them are on this image, but we had June all over the place because that's part of the naming convention. But fortunately, none of them ever grew especially large, and we're crossing our fingers that doesn't happen in the future. Those large fires turn out that they're more in the southeastern portion of the basin, and some of them have gotten quite big, more than 10,000 acres. And even though some of the area is, forested, kind of sparsely wooded, a lot of it is not covered by trees at all. But nevertheless, these areas have burned very hot and very large over the last few years. And with that brief glimpse at our big fires, I'll invite Kirstie up to talk about the smaller fires here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kirstie Butler. I'm with the U.S. Forest Service. I am a fire prevention technician. I've been in Levining since 2004, permanent fire prevention since 2007. I was born and raised in Bishop, so I do seem to know a little bit what's going on around here. And I especially love that it's not so hot up here. Bishop was hot growing up. So yes, I have access to databases that maybe Rick doesn't. The Forest Service and U.S. Department of Interior, as well as some of our other federal agencies, use Inform as a database. You'll see some of my maps when I bring them up. And in hindsight, I should have done one map at the very end that had all the fires on them, because the maps that I have on my slides are everything 5 acres and smaller. If I would have done up to 100,000 acres, we could have got a more dramatic map. But I'm here to talk about the small fires. And I should say that I am a fire prevention technician. I did say I'm fire prevention, but I am a fire investigator as well as a firefighter qualified to fight fires. So yeah, I've been on most of these ones that I'm telling you about since 2007. So we're going to talk about those fires that nobody remembers. They're small and remote fires in the Mono Basin. And we're just going to go over a few examples. First, of human-caused fires. So human-caused fires, I pulled up my database, and like I said, we're doing small and remote fires. So I did everything 5 acres and under, and these are human-caused fires here. All the little dots since 1992 to present. So it's only 28 years. So to take that into consideration, or if you might consider 28 years a long time. Oh, I'm 41, so I've seen most of these fires. So yeah, 5 acres and lower. Don't worry about the color of the dots. It just means that there's some data missing or something like that. But all these dots on here, no matter the color, are human-caused fires under 5 acres. And most of them, I will say, are less, or like right around 1/10 of an acre, if not smaller than that. We usually catch little abandoned campfires and those kind of things at just like a 10 by 10 spot. So. Oh, yes, I should address that. That Rick brought that up to me. It's so this database goes back to 1992, and what happened is a lot of the old data that they pulled from old databases had wrong Latin longs and that kind of thing on there. So you get fires in the middle of Mono Lake. But yes, there's not actually a fire there. It was just the wrong Latin long there. Thank you for the question. So one of the causes that I see a lot are abandoned campfires, and they've escaped. We see abandoned campfires that stay in the ring, but we also see them when they escape. I was personally on this fire, first on scene, May of 2012. It was actually a father and son that had stopped to camp just on the backside of the Mono craters, right before the burn area. And they just pulled over and they had a campfire, went to bed, woke up, and we're like, oh no, what do we do? So they called us because they didn't have enough water to put the fire out. And like I said, it only got it to 1/10 of an acre. We didn't charge them for it. We got it small, but that we see that the escape campfires quite frequently, but a lot of people don't see those ones, and we have to go respond to those and keep them from getting big. But the other cause that we see frequently around here that I've personally seen is vehicles, whether it's equipment from masticating or this fire here was the 120 fire back in August of 2015. And pretty sure it was a catalytic converter. I found multiple, I was the investigator on it, and I found multiple car parts alongside the road, but it was finally that catalytic converter that that must have just shot out. This was like right as you're starting to go up Tioga Pass. So that can happen if you have old catalytic converters, that those honeycomb pieces inside will kind of rattle loose, and then when you hammer down to go up a hill, they'll kind of pop out and start fires like this. So we do see these ones. I want to say Dave's going to talk about the Conway fire, and that was a chain dragging behind someone's rig that started that fire. And we've seen DWP start fires with their masticators. Caltrans started a fire with their masticator up 120 East just before I started my job. So yeah, vehicle related fires are a pretty common cause, but like I said, most of the time they stay small. Like this one was just a little 1/10 of an acre. The biggest inconvenience for people was that we had to shut a lane down on Tioga Pass. Sure. Yeah, we can open
I
it.
just did it for the mic, but I can open it. Just let's in more.
Oh,
when
it interrupts, I'll sit out there.
okay.
And then here's another campfire. This was an abandoned campfire that someone didn't put out. This was out at Johnny Meadows. Do people know where Johnny Meadows is? If you go out 120 East, out Sage Hen Meadow Road, if you keep going towards Dexter Canyon, you'll get to this area down there called Johnny Meadows. And someone had stopped to camp and left their campfire going, and it escaped. Fortunately, we kept it out of a 1/10 of an acre, but you would have never known about this one because Johnny Meadows is way out there, and no one's talking about that kind of thing. So yes, we see quite a few human-caused fires, but the majority of our fires are lightning, and I think y'all know that. And most of the time they stay small. And I'm really in hindsight wishing I would have done like big fires compared to small fires, because it's overwhelmingly the amount of small 1/10 of an acre single tree fires that we have from lightning that's the majority compared to the stuff that starts getting bigger above 10 acres, but yeah, there's a good picture of, I think that's near the Mammoth Airport somewhere. It's pretty cool. I, for one, am not scared of lightning. I have been up on Bald Mountain Lookout numerous times with strikes that have been from me to the door. And I'm like, bring it on. So, so this is from July, one day, just one 24-hour period of July 2017 of lightning strikes in a 24-hour period. And you can see, it's the mono, looks like it's about Bridgeport area, all the way to the southern part of the forest. But that's, I mean, you guys know we can get lightning, so it's no surprise that the majority of our fires are lightning caused. And a lot of the times they're remote. Us firefighters, people don't see it. The fires nobody remembers. We're out there till midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, then have to get up. We have to get 8 hours of rest. So we have to get up at 8 if we get in at midnight and go back out and check it and make sure. So these kind of fires definitely eat our time with our families and stuff. And I don't think people understand, like, even just a small little fire like that is going to affect us firefighters anyway. So this fire was the Adobe fire in July of 2012. This fire was interesting. It was started by multiple lightning strikes. I was a fresh fire investigator at the time, and there were fresh lightning scars all over the place. There was probably 3 different trees that got struck that started this fire, and it ended up at 30 acres, very remote. I don't even think you could see smoke from Lee Vining here, maybe from Conway Summit. Yeah, it was east of Mono Lake, north of what is now the Granite Mountain Wilderness. Back then it wasn't Granite Mountain Wilderness. And so I was able to drive straight to this fire on very sketchy roads. Then we have, other smaller fires, like this was, I believe, the Mono fire, the same exact day of July 2022. There was another fire called the Dune fire that started almost exact same time, but it was like one little ravine over from it. But just single quarter acre, single tree, or not a quarter, 1/10 of an acre, way out there north of the Granite Mountain Wilderness. Took forever to get to it, had to hike into it. We're eating lunch or dinner out there at 10 o'clock at night, and with our hiking out with headlamps, and it's fun. It's a fun job, but people don't, these are the fires nobody remembers. And it was yeah, exactly, you don't want to remember them. And this one was right off the Toby Meadows Road, but we had to hike up over the little ravine. And then we have, this is a picture by Bob Gardner, the Parker fire in 2017. Lightning, it was just on that one little bench right above the trailhead parking lot area. And we held it to 2.2 acres. And I think the only reason people might remember this one is because you can still see the scar a little bit, and it's memorialized on Facebook now. So this is a map of all the lightning strike fires, 5 acres and below. So I don't know if you remember the previous map. I should have done them back to back, but the human caused, you could see almost no human caused out this way. Everything human caused is, in here. But then the clusters also get bigger because where humans camp, there's also lightning. So, or recreate or whatever. So yeah, I think it probably, if I would have counted them, probably tripled in the amount of dots. So that it's definitely, 3 to 1 lightning out of human caused. And then I did pull up some of these maps from my databases. These are all lightning fires. You can see this one here is the 2003 Sage Hen fire that the Pizona fire is now run into and helped slow that down. So that was kind of good, because it was tough on those poor firefighters out there. They were like, how are we going to fight this thing? There's no roads, there's rough, steep country. Like, okay, good. We got that old fire scar out there. We'll bank off of that. But then there's the little bit more dramatic, that's the combined human and natural fires from 1992 to present. And they're all 5 acres and under. I should have done one with all the sizes, but that's all the stuff 5 acres and under, and a lot of the ones you're never gonna remember. No, thank you. Yes.
You can talk about charging people for fires. When is that happening?
If-
How often?
It happens a little more frequently than you. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, how often do we charge people for fires? And it happens a little more frequently when we are able to, when we have someone, when they're either caught or they left their trash there, or a license plate was captured, or they straight up admit it. Then people get charged for fires. But a lot of the times, you come up on an abandoned campfire, there's no evidence. There's no way to find those people. So
We'll do questions.
yeah, we can do questions after.
You have some more slides?
I do. Oh, that's right. We're talking about managed fire. So this is, we're talking about natural fires. The Forest Service and some of the other agencies have adopted what used to be more common and is now coming back into use, and that's using natural ignitions from lightning to manage fires to be good for the land, because this ecosystem is reliant on fire. A lot of our plants and trees and even our wildlife, needs fire to survive. And so we're getting back to using fires that were caused naturally in a controlled way to reintroduce fire to our fire dependent ecosystems. And I think you guys would probably remember the cow track fire from last year. Hopefully it didn't make a big impact on a lot of people because it was way out. They called it the cow track. It wasn't anywhere near Cow Track Mountain. We don't name the fires. Our dispatch center sees like a general area where they're at and picks a name from the map, so we don't name the fires, just to let you know. But it was a great fire, an area that hadn't been burned in a long time. Lots of Bodie stumps out there that we were able to protect most of them. But it was just so overgrown with vegetation. I mean, you can see it's just, and this was, I should have got better pictures, but then you can see, I pan over just a tiny bit in this picture and you can see it clears it out, but not 100%. It's not taking it, it's not nuking it like where there's no more vegetation left at all. And a lot of times it's taking it'll burn completely the younger trees or the unhealthy trees that might not have the sap to come out and get that fire from, not torching up the whole tree. Yeah, I mean, it's a healthy way to reintroduce fire. This area hadn't seen fire in ages. We got to do it. It's 323 acres, and you should go out there now. It looks beautiful. And I think you're going to talk about that, right? Yeah. And then we had the Springs fire, which I'm sure a lot of people, that was our first getting our feet wet with managed fire. And I think we got close, a little over 3,000 acres on this one. And there was some good fire effects in there. Some places got a little hotter, some places could have been a little hotter, but overall fire got in the ecosystem and we were happy. So that's the wave of the future for the Forest Service anyway, as well as the prescribed fire, which I believe you're going to talk about.
My turn. And before
Yes.
I do that, Deanna Bone-Rundle, come on down. She needs to get over here. Well, there's this nice cool breeze blowing right where I was sitting. You want to come? I'm concerned about you. You want to come over here? I know you didn't want to walk in front of the screen. Come on, come on. Okay, so while Deanna is moving, I'll get started here. Let me check the time. How are we doing here? All right, we're doing good. So Rick Kattelmann kind of organized the three of us, and he said, Dave, I'd like you to finish by talking about things that you've remember. She says Kirstie said, you know, the fires no one remembers. I'm going to talk about fires I remember, basically. And I'm especially interested, if any of you have looked at the books I've written about fire ecology, I'm interested in the aftermath of what happens with these fires. I hope you're hearing me okay. I can't tell when I'm behind the speaker. Okay. So this was a fire up near Lundy Canyon a year afterwards, where that fire had burned where the power plant is. And on that hill, it had done one of those things like Rick showed, where the fire at night was racing up the hill. It was really interesting to watch that. What was really interesting is this was a sagebrush scrub hillside dominated by sage. And a year later, this is what happened. The seeds that were waiting to germinate until fire showed up just produced this incredible show. And that happens in a lot of different ways in a lot of different places. Kirstie mentioned that I was going to include this picture. Truck, I guess, dragging a chain, started a fire. This is looking up towards Conway Summit up here. And here's the highway right before it does its big loop-de-loop around. And this one just burnt away from, thank goodness, from Mono City. 2015, you'll notice the years here are just progressing. There was this Walker Lake fire, and this gorgeous photograph really taken at night. That's Sam's cabin down by the highway south of Levining. And in the morning, or afterwards, I should say, when the following spring came, another one of these fire follower flowers, if you can say that, fire follower flowers. In this case, it looks like it's lupin and poppies and some paintbrush. That just happened from that particular fire. That was a scary fire for the mobile and the Wonelli Deli and the people in Levining Canyon. Were concerned, but it turned out to be no buildings were taken. Rick showed a different picture of the Marina fire in 2016, a year later. I wanted to show you what happened. Just as part of the Marina fire burned an aspen grove just north of the Tioga Lodge. And it looked devastated, but aspens are really interesting. They grow in relatively wet places. They like to keep their feet, their roots in wet ground. And so within 2 years, the sprouting was happened. This is probably all one, by the way, all one organism, plant or aspen groves. Are all one big kind of a clonal organism. And anyway, they started sprouting. That was after 2 years. This was a picture I just took the other day. And so those little guys that I couldn't, were not up to my waist yet. This is now way over my head. These trees are coming back. And this grove that looked so devastated is reestablishing itself. The picnic fire, this is one that it's interesting they chose that name. There's Picnic Grounds Road. Where this is right on the edge of Mono Lake, right out there, at an area that we call Levining Tufa. And somebody had a cigarette and started that fire. And this is during when it was really at its biggest. This is after they had it out, and you can see it's a blurry picture. You can see some fire crew there working on any hot spots. Lots of ash. Tufas. This is one of the big tufa areas of Mono Lake. And some people were really concerned that the tufa the heat would have damaged the tufa. It did cause some crustal loosening of the outer portion of the edges of tufa, but these towers didn't crumble to nothing. And I want you to just notice, okay, over here's where the fire started, where that ribbon is. And I'm going to just show you a couple more close-ups. This is taken again after some months. I think it was the fall, may have been the spring after. But anyway, I'm zooming in on what's going on the ground. This is wet ground. These aren't just grasses. These are reeds. What a lot of tules and cattails grow in that area. And this willow is just sprouting from its roots that were not damaged. What does heat do? It rises, right? So often the heat of a fire doesn't penetrate down into the soil very far. And so the roots, especially if it's wet soil. So interesting to watch that. So here's another one that affected Mono Lake and eventually some of the tufa at Mono Lake. 2020, you may recall, August that year was when Northern California, Central California, the Coast Range even went crazy with lightning. And that's super rare over there. Over here, as you saw from Kirstie's maps, we get lots of lightning, but that's where we got some enormous fires that burnt into the coastal redwoods and did all kinds of things. This fire started in the evening. Some of us were sitting at the Mono Inn and saw the lightning strike out there east of, yes? Nobody can hear you unless you're on a microphone. Yeah.
Okay, that day, my lightning recorder on my weather station hit 424 lightning strikes within 25 miles of Mono City in the
Jeez.
one 24-hour period.
And this fire started, which became known as the Beach Fire. So August 16th, and this map has very little detail, but if you're familiar with going to the South Tufa area, this is the parking lot. There's the road coming from the Highway 120. And this is the loop trail, the walking trail that goes through the main Tufa area. And the fire came from way off to the east and swept this direction and didn't quite get to that trail. Okay, so let me show you some pictures. I find this fascinating. So that was August. This is just a couple months later in October. And we got in and took a picture. You can see around the tufas, it really charred things. And then farther out, as you get over closer to the lake, it got wetter and wetter. And so there was less fire, and there's going to be a real quick recovery out there. So that was October. This is April, the following spring. Now, remember that winter? That was a really giant winter, but it took a long time before I could get in there. But when I finally got in there, I was real curious to see what was happening in the burned area. You can see the burn, mostly this is rabbit brush that just standing charred sticks. What you got here at the bottom are greasewood stumps sprouting, and rabbit brush doesn't do that. Different species don't do that, but greasewood is very good at it, and they started coming back. You also got a lot of this grass. This is the salt grass that goes around Mono Lake, and it's like Bermuda grass. It has rhizomes that run connect up all these plants into one system, really. And those rhizomes did not get killed by the fire. And right away, they started sprouting back. The tufas, again, this is an interesting experiment. A lot of these tufas had vegetation not only right around them, but growing out of the tops of them. And that all just burned. And so they were really tested, but it actually opened up a lot of tufa that you really didn't see before at all because they were enclosed by so many shrubs. And now we're looking at October 2021, a full over a year later. And this is one of those greasewoods now turning into a pretty good shrub again. And again, the grass is pretty tall and we're going into fall there. That same period where the lightning was just going crazy all over Northern and Central California started this fire. And this was a fire that was over, called the Creek Fire. So here's California, and there's this incredible smoke plume, and we're, right here. Here's the Bay Area. We're right there. And I put this in not because it is on the east side fire, but take a look at what was happening on the east side. This is the air pollution index, and it's pegged out just as high as that measurement could possibly be. And this is why that fire got into so much fuel, so many dead trees in the forest on the west side, that this pyrocumulonimbus cloud formed. It penetrated all the way up through into the layers of the atmosphere. And a lady in an airplane got this incredible shot. She was flying to the Bay Area. And what did it do to us? Why did I put this in here? This was the view out. Many of us remember this when the sky turned red. Other parts of the state had similar things going. This is just what the incredible amount of smoke ash was doing to us for a while there, and never seen it before. I've been here 43 years now, and we've seen a lot of smoke from fires. Never seen this kind of an effect. It was crazy, and I'm glad it's over. So I'm jumping back in time into some of the, just quickly now, a couple of examples of what Kirstie and the fire crews are doing nowadays. This is right below my house in Mono City. Off to the right would be Mono City. This is Mill Creek coming down through here. And they went, the crews came and they piled up anything that was dead. And then these pile burns, RX burns, prescription burns. And it was neat to see. Notice the smoke is nowhere near as intense from these kinds of things. They can control the smoke in a controlled fire. And when we get into these incredible monster fires, that's when smoke events go insane. This is something that I've written about in 3 different books now about fire. I think we need to honor those who fight them, wildfires, but we really need to honor the peacemakers who use fire to help us try to join the list of fire adapted species that are all across this landscape. That's my objective in writing these books. So here's some examples of how they do it. There's some strip burning. This is pile burning. This was up actually in the Mammoth Lake Basin getting ready to burn. Sometimes they have to wait till there's snow on the ground. And this particular piles were over near the Double Eagle on the June Lake Loop area. Great time to burn because you're not going to lose it. A friend of mine took this picture. His name was Pete Hine. He was a local Levining fire guy, and he's not with us anymore. Great picture of broadcast burning going on, not just pile burning, but moving fire along the ground and around the vegetation, and getting the full benefit of how heat and smoke works on a lot of these different species. And I actually used Pete's picture, part cropped, as the cover on the first edition of this book I wrote. And this is the latest edition, came out in 2021. And what I liked about this is UC Press made this edition bigger. There's 111 pictures in there, and it's nice to see, and maps, and it's nice to see them nice and big. So that's all I had for you. That's all we had for you. We should bring Rick and Kirstie back up and see about questions. Okay. We'll start in the room. If there's anybody has any questions, we have microphones because we do have, I don't know how many, at least 30 or more people out there in Zoom land that want to hear too. So anybody? No? Oh, okay. You need this?
I have struggled over the years, seeing what I think is a smoke, but I'm not sure. Maybe it's just dust. And I've struggled with whether to call dispatch or not. And so my question is, how many of those little fires you were talking about were just somebody calling in and saying, I see smoke? And do you have any like rules of thumb? Should we just do it? If there's any chance it could be a smoke, we should call it in? Just some advice on that.
Yes, definitely call it in if you're questioning what it is. My rule of thumb I will watch something for a while. And I'm teaching my daughters this, you'll want to watch it for a little while. If it has like a beige color to it, it's most likely going to be dust. It can be a little more tricky when it's the backside of Mono Lake and it's kind of white from the alkali, right? But my general rule of thumb is if it's kind of a tannish beige color, it's probably going to be dust. But when in doubt, call it in. The second part of your question, none of those fires are on that map because they don't go on that map unless it's a real fire. So those are what go into our database as a false alarm, and they don't go into that. Those go into a different database that they don't go onto that map.
What would you say? But sometimes when people call it in, it is a real fire.
Yes.
And that helps you find it, right?
Yes, that's why I say when in doubt, call it in, because we can always, and I've done it numerous times for hawthorn blasting to the dump doing something and dust is coming up, to the whirlwinds out on the alkali behind Mono Lake. That people call it in. I get called out. I go look at it, watch it for a while, see, or I drive down towards Tioga or down Tioga and look out at and be like, oh yeah, it's Hawthorne blasting, you know. But yes, call it in if you have doubts. There's no harm. That's what I do. That's what our fire crews do. We are there to check to make sure it's not a fire. So yeah, call it in when in doubt.
Connie Millar has a question.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? It's Connie. No.
Dave, that's Connie Millar. Can you, I
was
think you need to
wondering
turn up.
About Mono City because we're trying to do fire prevention and trying to apply for something that will make it better for us. If we wanted to know or get some advice about what we could do around our house or our lots, who would we call?
So you would be calling CAL FIRE. Hopefully they would send someone out from Bishop because that is a private property. I will say I have done inspections for defensible space on private property. If my boss is okay with that, I ask permission. It's someone has asked for inspection just to get some advice. It's not for any kind of regulatory thing. It's just for some advice. And she says, okay, it's okay. But you should go to CAL FIRE first because that is their jurisdiction. But that would be a good place to start. And then I would suggest talking to your fire chief if possible too, and see if you could get green waste dumpsters. I do those. I did that 1 year for the whole county, or just North Mono County. But now I just mainly do it for June Lake, and it's great to be able to just at your leisure be able to throw your green waste into a dumpster and yeah. So
And,
maybe
and
talk to him about that too.
let me say that Mono City and I think Levining both do that.
good.
We had a dumpster all last summer, and it's good to use that. And there's a lot. Okay, and I got another person with a question, but John, you want to say something?
Hello, I'm John Warnicki, Fire Commissioner, Mono City Fire, also active duty firefighter. We're not doing a green waste bin in Mono City this year, unfortunately. We've just had too many problems. Community members not following the rules, putting in too many debris. So we're doing dump vouchers this year. And Deanna, I'd be happy to bring you some vouchers along with my handout from California Fire Safe Council. I have a bunch of literature about defensible space and home hardening. And I'm also the defensible space coordinator and fuels mitigation removal officer. I've got a funky title. And I can come around and talk with you and Ken about what we can do. But also CAL FIRE did come through recently. We did a walkthrough with the battalion chief, with the captain, and there's Firewise kind of council starting up from Mono City. That's Connie Millar and Lisa Cutting and Margaret Eisler. So there are resources in Mono City, and we want to work with you. Thank you. And anyone else.
And I heard Connie wants to say something, but just a moment here. We have one more question.
You mentioned that trees use sap to protect themselves. Can you describe a little bit more about that? And any other protective measures? And thirdly, sorry, how do you want us to call in? Is it 911 or is there another number?
You can call 911. We do have a direct line to our interagency dispatch center down in Bishop, and that's the preferred method if you think it's a wildland fire. If it's a vehicle fire, a structure fire, you know, something like that, you would want to definitely call 911 for that. Takes you to Mono County sheriff. But yeah, if I can I mean, it's pretty easy to look up the Owens Valley Interagency Communication Center. They have their numbers 873-2405, and it's a direct line to them. And then yes, the trees, same thing. as they do with bark beetles, a healthy tree can emit sap that will keep those bark beetles out. So, and it also keeps the tree more moist, is how I'd want to put it. As far as it's not going to be readily able to burn. So a healthy tree with its full sap that hasn't been attacked by beetles, that's draining that sap out, is going to be able to withstand a fire way more than an unhealthy tree. So that's what I meant by that. And then, and of course, the other protective measures are their bark. Aspens are quite resilient because they're so water, they have so much moisture in them. But the Jeffreys are very fire resistant with their thick bark. And then actually the lodgepoles are pretty fire resistant with their thin bark and there's shorter needles, so they don't have as much fuel building up that would make the fire travel up the tree, like just to completely destroy it. It would maybe climb up a little ways, but most of the time it'll peter out. So that's what I meant by that.
Dave Carle.
Okay, we have
Dave?
a cup.
Dave?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
Dave Carle.
I'm going to you now. Go ahead.
This is Rich. You have two other questions from Zoom land. Connie Millar has another question, and Sanford's iPad 2 has a question that
I saw that. Thank you. Connie, you want to ask whatever? Go for it.
Okay. Thank you. This was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, Rick, Kirstie, and Dave. That's a great overview. My question was to Kirstie about those small fires. That's an amazing map. It's terrifying. And so my question is, are they small? Because which would you say is the main reason why they stay small? Is it because you have immediate suppression, or is it weather that comes with those? And so they go out on their own. And I understand that around 10 acres is the threshold when you consider them a fire that might be out of control. So just natural or suppression? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Connie. Yes, it's a combination of both. So yeah, everyone knows most of our lightning when we get lightning, we're going to get rain with it and hail and possibly snow up in the high country, with the lightning. So that helps to dampen the vegetation around those fires so that they're not getting big very fast, which gives us time to get there to suppress them, or now, like I said, possibly manage them. So we might put them in check, and if it's a good fire that we might be able to manage, then we might start making those decisions with risk management tools, that kind of thing. But the human caused fires, most of them stay small because we are on them right away, whether it's the volunteer fire departments, or it's the Forest Service, or some of our cooperators, some of the other cooperators around here. We can respond pretty quickly for the most part, and they stay pretty small. So that's a combination of both of us there, Connie.
Okay, if that's okay with Connie, then Sanford's iPad 2. Go ahead. Are you there? No? Yeah, you need to mute. You need to mute yourself or unmute yourself. I'm sorry. Or you can hold down the space bar and talk while you have the space bar down. That works. No, nobody there. Okay. Anybody else? If he comes back, we'll go to him.
Hi. Do you have fire prevention plans for the Forest Service lands surrounding Levine and Mono City?
Yes, we do. They were actually in the process of redoing our interagency prevention plan that will also include BLM lands, because a lot of what's around Mono City is BLM as well. So we're in the process of redoing that. The last time it was redone was in 2019. So yes, we have plans, and they're going to be new probably before the end of the year's over.
When do you foresee treating the riparian vegetation along Mill Creek directly south of Mono City.
From what I heard happened, there were crews in there working, and there was, I believe they had a masticator, and they were hindered by something. I can't exactly remember what it was that was down in the area. Maybe it was too wet still or something, but I know that they're going at some point this year trying to get back into that riparian area. I'm not the fire management officer. That's what I've heard. So don't take my word with a grain of salt. It would be better to talk to Stephanie Heller to get an actual answer on that.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm wondering if how you decide which fires to let burn that are lightning struck and which ones you choose to suppress. Like what factors go into those decisions?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we have a whole, we actually just came out with a brand new managed fire decision plan is what we do. And we have different databases that we can type in all the type of fuel it is, the type of weather it is, the fuel moistures, how are the fuels looking as far as how dry they are. We can put in the topography, the slopes, everything into a decision maker called WFDIS, which is a wildfire decision plan. And it shoots us out a model of what, based on what you've told us, what your fire could possibly look like. And then you can put in all kinds of these other factors and get all these different models. The other thing that we have to look at is if we have NEPA and EA stuff done on that land, if we already had something for some prescribed fire that we had planned 5-10 years down the road, if we already have that stuff in place, it makes it easier for us to say, oh, well, we already have the NEPA done on that. So it's possible we could go ahead and manage this fire, and we're definitely herding it around. We're not letting it do whatever it wants, but yeah, so we definitely have a lot of databases and models that we look at. All that data comes into play for those decision-making processes.
I could point out that the reason it's called a prescribed fire is there's a prescription.
Exactly.
Involved. Yes. I have a question. If I can remember what it was now. It went by me about 10 minutes ago. That's all right. Anybody else? Okay, it's getting to be, okay, Nick, coming with a microphone.
My question is actually for Rick, I think. I was wondering if you could talk a little more about what a lightning fire looked like in pre-colonial times before there was fire suppression, really. I'm curious to hear more about what fires did when we didn't have the Forest Service just managing or putting it out or whatever. And what did those lightning fires tend to do? When did they go out, and how did that shape the way things looked back then?
Great question. We don't know.
Well, I didn't think you were there, but
not that.
Right.
But what we can say with a fair amount of confidence, because there've been a bunch of studies on this sort of thing, is what the resulting forest looked like. And that was, we believe, that the natural pre-colonial Jeffrey pine and mixed conifer forests were this incredibly mixed up patchwork of stand densities, lots of openings, different age classes. And just as you walked around through the forest, it wouldn't look the same for more than 5 minutes. You go 100 yards and you're into something different. You might have exactly the same species there, but all those different patches were created by small natural ignitions that didn't burn very far for the most part. Occasionally they did. There's history of huge fires under the right conditions. It's not like they never existed, but by and large, they stayed pretty small, and they created this vast mixture of a very diverse forested landscape. Anything else?
I would, yeah, all our data suggests the same thing. Yeah, they call it a mosaic pattern, which when we're doing prescribed burns, we're trying to mimic that mosaic pattern because, yeah, it's not burning the same based on if it's running into, like I think I said, the Pizona fire is running into the Sachin fire. Well, that's gonna create that patchwork of different. This piece of ground is gonna look way different than that piece of ground now, you know, and vice versa where it didn't burn. So, yeah, definitely the same. I agree with Rick.
I'd like to thank all our speakers for the presentation and the questions.
Ooh.
What are we gonna ask?
And I'm sure they'll be around for a few more minutes if you have any questions one-on-one. Thanks, everybody. See you back in the usual place next time, I hope.